Did you guys know that the United States Supreme Court will be deciding on a case this year that'll determine the fate of 800,000 immigrants, otherwise known as the Dreamers? But first, who are the Dreamers and what is DACA? We hear those words in the news all the time, but not many of us really understand who the Dreamers really are. So let's talk about it. So in this video, I'm going to give you guys a story behind the Dreamers, how DACA was created, and how we got here. In the 1990s and early 2000s, a lot of families and individuals were traveling back and forth between their home countries and the United States by crossing the border without authorization. They would come here to the US to make some money, and they would take that money back to their home country so that they're able to provide for their families. But also around that time, the US started really tightening the security at the US-Mexico border. This made those repeated border crossings very risky and very dangerous. And also around that time, laws were being passed that made it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for individuals who enter without authorization and live in the United States undocumented to get any type of legal status in the US. And so in order to avoid the dangers associated with those border crossings, and also to avoid the harsh legal consequences, a lot of those individuals decided that they would remain in the United States and live here undocumented. And a lot of those families had small children. And those children are what we know now as the Dreamers. And because those children were brought here to the United States by their parents, so it's not really their fault that they found themselves in this situation, there was a big push towards providing some form of protection to those children so that they're able to live in the United States legally and at least be able to work legally. So in 2001, the DREAM Act was first introduced into Congress. Unfortunately, nothing really ever became of it. It was stalled in Congress, so it never really became law. So finally, in 2012, Obama created DACA, or Deferred Action Against Childhood Arrivals. And it's really important for us to understand what DACA really is. So DACA does not really give anyone any type of legal status or path towards citizenship. All it does is that it provides temporary protection for the Dreamers from being deported from the United States. And it also gives them work authorization so that they're able to work in the United States legally. But it's not really a permanent solution in any way, shape, or form. DACA recipients have to continue to apply for DACA every 2 years. So the protection is only temporary, and not all Dreamers qualify for DACA. In order to qualify for DACA, you have to have arrived to the United States before 2007, and at the time you have to have been 15 years or younger. And also, as of 2012, you would have had to be 31 years or younger. And on top of that, you have to have a very clean criminal record. Even the most minor misdemeanor can disqualify you from becoming a DACA recipient. So after DACA was created in 2012, hundreds of thousands of individuals who qualify applied for it and received DACA. And they were able to continue to live in the United States and work here legally. And even though it was a temporary solution, it provided some sense of normalcy to their lives. Fast forward to today. After Trump became president, he rescinded or terminated DACA. After he made that decision, there were a lot of legal challenges that were being brought in courts to the termination or the lawfulness of the termination of DACA by Trump. So in response to that, the courts placed an injunction on the termination of the program so that DACA recipients were able to continue to renew their DACA every 2 years while the litigation is pending. So now those cases went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and any day this year, the court will be deciding on two things. First, whether it even has the authority to review DACA, and if so, is DACA lawful? So the decision is going to be a very important decision that's going to determine the fate of all of those hundreds of thousands of DACA recipients. And there are a few possible outcomes. The first is that DACA would be completely terminated, and in that case, DACA recipients will not be able to continue to renew their DACA and will be at risk of deportation after the expiration of their work authorizations. A second possible outcome could be that DACA would be rescinded, but only in part, which means that current DACA recipients will be able to continue to renew their DACA indefinitely, but the people who have never applied for DACA will not be able to apply now. The third possible outcome is that the court will decide that DACA is lawful and so it will continue and nothing will really happen to it. Maybe the court is even going to give DACA recipients more rights. We never really know, you know, a girl can only dream. But those are probably the most likely outcomes right now. So at any point this year, the Supreme Court is going to be coming out with a decision that's going to determine the fate of the DACA program. One last thing I want to mention about this topic is that I know that there are a lot of strong opinions on each side, but I want this to be a space where we form our opinion based on facts, which is why I'm making this video, so that you guys know the story behind the dreamers and know what DACA is before you form your opinion one way or the other. And I really want to urge you guys to take a second to put yourself in the shoes of those dreamers. Imagine being a child and having to move to another country with your family, and you live your life in that country not knowing that you're not a citizen. And you only find out about that when you're older, when you're trying to, you know, apply for university or a driver's license or enroll in school. Even though you grew up here, you have American friends, the US is really the only country that you can call home. And then you realize that you are at risk of deportation at any second. And even after you're afforded some form of protection from the government, you are now at risk of having all of that taken away from you after years and years of, you know, living here and building your life and becoming a contributing member of society. I know that most of you will probably agree that that is a very harsh and inhumane consequence. You know, DACA recipients are not criminals. They're required to have a high school education at least, and up to 25% of them actually have a graduate degree or higher, and 60,000 of them are healthcare workers who are right now fighting in the front lines against COVID-19. I hope you guys found this video informative and helpful. I hope you understand the story behind the dreamers, who they are, and what DACA is. And if you guys want me to do more videos like this, please comment below. And as always, stay safe.